homelessness. And Utah came up with this concept about 10 years ago, and it was in response to what they were talking about, that it's more expensive to deal with emergency room visits and treatment centers, drug rehabilitation, just police. Housing them in jail is more expensive than housing them in an apartment. So the government has kind of set aside some money and built several of these projects now. We probably have 4 or 5 of them that are just for homeless. And what they find is they look like normal apartment communities. You saw that place. What they do is they put case management on site. They put case manager and drug counselors and employment specialists, and they work with these people and they coach them. It's a lot easier, they know where they live at night to help them than it is when they're wandering around from viaduct to park, and so it's really quite a success. In fact, my friend who's a city councilman in Phoenix, he told me a few years ago they flew up to study Salt Lake City, the city of Phoenix, and most states now are looking at how Utah has just dramatically reduced our homeless population. It's a really good thing for all of us. So anyway, that was kind of fun to show you. Well, welcome. I've got a couple of updates for you about the legislature. We are the 4th day now. 4 days out of how many? Do you remember? 45. See, apartment association members are smart. They know how things work. They know the world. So good job. So we only have 41 more days to hold on to our wallets. But so far so good. We have 4 bills that we're really focused on at the legislature. Let me just spend a minute and update you on. And then we know there'll be a lot of defense to play. There always is. But so far we don't know very much. I mean, we know a couple of things, but we don't have all the details. So first thing is, you probably saw the LDS Church this week came out endorsing or supporting rights for LGBT, people who are gay, in housing and employment, okay? And they kind of had a cryptic statement. It kind of is, we support the concept of having protections for them, but we also support religious freedom. So it'll be interesting to see what the legislature does. If they pass the sexual orientation as a protected class just flat out, or whether they have some type of exception for religious convictions or something like that. I know the legislature is really focused on not having laws that, I don't know if you know about that case in New York, but somebody decided that they didn't want to have a gay wedding in their wedding reception or something, but so the state fined them $10,000. And so Utah's really focused on saying, look, if people have religious issues, we don't want them to be beaten up. But on the other hand, what we've been telling you for years as the Apartment Association is that you should not use sexual orientation as a reason to discriminate, because it's not a risk factor, it's not a business decision. Typically, landlords make business decisions, correct? We're looking for whether tenants can pay, whether they'll damage the property, whether they commit crime, and whether they can get along in the neighborhood. And if they can, we don't care if they're gay or straight or tall or short or an attorney or a BYU fan, a Utah fan, you know what I'm saying? I mean, it really doesn't matter, none of that stuff. And so we, for years, have said you really shouldn't look at that as a factor. However, we've always opposed adding any additional protected classes, not on the basis that we're opposed to the military, but we don't want military added as a protected class, or pet owners. But we don't want pet owners added as a protected class. You know, in San Francisco, pet owners are a protected class. You can't say no to somebody who has a pet. So it just gets so onerous and so many different ways that they can sue landlords that we just, and one of the things interesting is the sexual orientation thing. Again, just let's be clear, I've never advocated discrimination because I don't think that there's a problem, okay? Some people say, oh, you're just hopelessly naive. Well, about 20 cities now have protections for sexual orientation. And how many cases do you think we've had in any of those 20 cities? None. So the local laws, there aren't being complaints, there aren't findings, there aren't discrimination on these local laws. So do we need a state law? Probably not. Are we going to get one? Probably yes. It's more of a PR issue. It's more of a, okay, we'd look like bigots and homophobes if we don't have it. So it's probably time to just bite the bullet and have one. And so that's the first issue that it'll be interesting to follow, but we'll let you know how that goes. But my guess is that it won't affect any of you, because none of you discriminate against people based on sexual orientation. Okay. Second, how many of you own rentals and HOAs? Okay. So have you ever had an HOA send you a letter and say, because you're a landlord, for the privilege of being a landlord, we're going to treat you differently than other people? Okay. Very common. In fact, somebody called me on Monday and said their HOA charges $100 or $600 a year extra if you rent your unit. Okay? And they don't let renters have pets. I mean, homeowners can have pets, but not renters. Renters can't rent the clubhouse or the pool facilities or different things. There's just a different set of rules. And the legislature voted unanimously this week in committee, 12 to nothing, to do away with that. And so the bill that we are behind and we've run with the HOA groups basically says HOAs can't charge different fees or have different policies, whether you're an owner in an HOA or owner-occupant, or whether you're an owner who chooses to rent. So that'll be a great protection for you, and we anticipate that having no problems passing. The next law is Salt Lake City's inspections. How many of you love it when you get a letter from Salt Lake City about the inspection? You're just so excited. Okay, I don't see any hands. It's because we really don't like Salt Lake City's inspections. Did you have a question?
Well, I got one, but they never showed up.
Oh, good. That's fabulous. So, how many of you know that 3 years ago the legislature ended inspections? They said cities can no longer do rental inspections unless there's cause or complaint. Well, it's amazing how much smarter you guys are than Salt Lake City, okay? Because Salt Lake City, well, they know, they just choose to ignore it, honestly. In fact, the first year that law was in place, the administration stopped inspections, and then the city council, who, let's admit it, Salt Lake City is very progressive, okay? They came and they said, why have you stopped doing inspections? And the city council or the administration lawyers said, because it's illegal. The legislature changed the rules, and the council directed their attorneys to find a loophole. And so they found a loophole. It really doesn't matter what it is. And so they've been trying to inspect, but there's no enforcement because the attorneys know they can't enforce it. They just send you these letters, right, and say, we want to inspect, and if you say yes, fine, but if you say no, they're not going to do anything about it. So we've been trying to decide whether we needed to close that loophole in the law, and so we have a law. Representative Dunnigan, how many of you know what position he holds? This is for extra credit. He is the majority leader. He's an insurance agent, deals with a lot of landlords, has a lot of you as clients, okay? And he's the second most powerful person, the Speaker of the House, and then the majority leader in the House of Representatives. And he's running a bill that would basically say, Salt Lake City, never can you do inspections unless there's cause or complaint. And it would do some other things that are pretty punitive. So Salt Lake City came back to the table. They're hard to negotiate with. Most cities you can go negotiate with the mayor, or you can negotiate with the city manager. But Salt Lake City doesn't work like that. It's so big, the council and the staff and the mayor's office and the lady down in the street corner that has a lot of power, they all got to give their opinion on things. So I think we've got them back to the table. It looks like they're going to cut a deal with us. And we are going to let them inspect big apartment complexes, 15% of the units every 4 years. Does anybody think that's unreasonable? They're professionally run. They're not going to have problems. What we're not going to let them do is inspect anything duplex or single family, okay? Because those are the guys they seem to just really go after and make you replace windows, which they can't do. If city ever says replace windows, guys, politely thumb your nose at them, okay? They try to make you turn older properties that are non-conforming into modern codes, and you don't generally understand they can't do that. They bully you. And so they've agreed they're not going to inspect single family or duplex except cause and complaint, and they'll only inspect every 4 years the larger complexes, which those guys don't care, but only a certain percentage of the units. Anybody have any questions?
What about fourplex properties?
A fourplex would be allowed. They could inspect. Do you remember? Is it 25% of the units?
I think so. 3 years.
So they can inspect one of your fourplex units every 4 years.
Every 4 years.
Yeah, and obviously they go in there and they say, oh my gosh, this is a disaster. They can probably then, it's cause to inspect the other ones,
Do they get to choose which unit in that?
They do, and here's one of the magic things. They have to give you 10 days notice, okay? 10 days notice for you to arrange with the tenant, for you to do a pre-inspection. And here's the other thing is that they've agreed on One of the things we don't like about Salt Lake City is it just depends on which inspector you get. Have you noticed? Okay, some guys are reasonable, some guys are Nazis. And so we now have a uniform standards that they can only ask you to do things that are on that list and nothing else. And so that's really good news, because you could take that list and you could go through your unit the day before and make sure it was all in shape and then hopefully breeze through that inspection. Yes?
How about the bugs back
What about bugs? You like them? Bed bugs, cockroaches?
Yes, uh-huh.
Well, if you like them, then you don't want the city to inspect, because anytime the city or the health department finds pests, they can require those to be remediated, okay? Now, let's ask this question. Whose cost? It's at the tenants if you're using the UAA lease, because the UAA lease says you attest the place is bed bug free, and you agree that, or pest free, and you agree that you won't bring any contaminated items. You won't invite la cucaracha parties and things like that over here. If you do, you got to pay for it, okay? Yeah?
This law of inspections, is it just for Salt Lake City? What about
So
Central
it's everybody, but here's the thing, nobody else does it. Salt Lake City, for some reason, thinks that they've got to employ 10,000 people, and so they keep hiring more inspectors, and we really need them. Okay, and so they've got to find something for this 15 inspectors in their department to do. The other cities don't have enough people, they don't have the time, they don't have the interest. So could they do it at some point? Maybe, and if they do, come talk to us. But usually St. George they do it occasionally, but not to the certain extent that Salt Lake City does. So, yeah.
I think being a part of the Good
Landlord Program
Program helps you to keep them not looking at you so much as they do at other people.
Most of the time, I think you're right. I think that's true. Being a part of the Good Landlord Program takes their focus off you. Any other questions? Okay, then the next bill is our Good Landlord Bill. We have some legislators who don't like certain elements of the Good Landlord Bill. And you know, the Good Landlord Program, as you know, has always been defensive. Did we design it because we thought it would be cool to have more regulations on landlords? No, okay? We had these high fees that cities were charging, and we said, how about if we make landlords take a class, you reduce the fee, and if they sign a contract that they'll do background checks, you reduce the fee. So it really was always about reducing your money and getting them out of your life. But government being what it is, sometimes some of these cities, any of you have a city that they make you get notarized documents for when you do, up north they do this a lot, or they just have 52 pages when you fill out your good landlord stuff. It takes hours to do your stupid business license, it just defeats the purpose. So we think that we've worked out most of those things. How many of you have units in South Salt Lake? They doubled their fees this year. That ticks us off, okay? Here's why. We helped them reduce crime 28%, okay? And they double our fees? I mean, it's just bad faith, okay? So we're a little bit frustrated with that. I'm meeting with Mayor Wood next Monday, and we're going to try to see what we can do there. Ultimately, I think good landlord programs will go away, except in cities where they work really well. But new cities and Salt Lake City just don't know how to use them, and so at some point we're looking at a solution that phases them out. And let me ask you this. What is a disproportionate fee? What's the purpose of a disproportionate fee? You guys are the smart landlords. What is it?
If you're a good landlord, you shouldn't have to pay the higher fee.
Well, true, but the higher fee is charged because why? It's theoretically.
Because if you have problems, then the police and everybody else have to do more work.
When they do studies, they find renters cost more, okay? And so who do they charge? Yeah, does that make sense? No, so here's what I would like to see, and I don't know exactly how this will work, but what if instead of a landlord licensing fee, they charge a renter registration fee, and just like a sales tax, they give you authority to pass it on to the renter. Now think about that, okay? Who cares if they charge $100 a unit if you collect that from the renter and just pass it on to the city? I mean, if they're really just about money, let's call it what it is. It's taxing the poor, underprivileged renters. And does that create a political problem for them? Can you imagine city council meeting when they say we're going to double our renter tax? I mean, renters would just file in that room like crazy, where if they say we're going to double our landlord fees, does anybody care? Landlords are rich anyway, and You know, and so I think that I would like to see us transition that way. We'll see if that's a possibility or not. But okay, so those are the issues that we know about. And does anybody have any questions about the legislative process? Rich?
My properties are in the county.
Mm-hmm.
I don't seem to be affected by a requirement for landlord.
Because
good landlord.
Salt Lake County does not require business licensing on buildings smaller than 4 units. And I'm okay with that. How about you? Okay? Yeah, I'm okay with that. Yeah.
Along that line, though, do I understand correctly that if you are a member of the Good Landlord Program, you will not rent to someone who has been in prison?
Some cities ask you to exclude higher risk tenants, including people who have certain convictions in the last 4 years. So it's not indefinite, but let's remind ourselves, do you know that recidivism in Utah for people who've committed sex, drugs, violent or property crimes in the last 4 years is like 68%? And you know what I found out the other day? That doesn't count when they're arrested for a crime by the city or the county, okay? So it's probably almost like 80%. So 80% of the time, if you rent to somebody who's done that in the last 4 years, it's a fail. Because if they get arrested for something, what happens to them? They're going to right back to jail and not be able to pay their. So most landlords already have those standards in place. What cities have basically said is that's a best business practice that we want you to continue to receive the discount on our fee. Yes?
Paul, I've been doing some humanitarian work the last
great,
2 years.
Great, great.
I have a little empathy and sympathy for somebody
As
who's in
do I.
prison. They get out of prison, they usually let them out in the middle of the night.
Uh-huh.
Where are they supposed to find housing?
Well, I bet you a lot of the people in this room would be willing to house them, okay? And I'm sure there's some people in this room that have sex offenders living in our place or have people who've committed crimes, and we made a decision based on risk whether we were willing to work with someone, okay? So I like educated decisions. An educated decision was they told me that they came out of prison, they told me why, I did a background check and I confirmed it, and I said, well, I'm willing to pay the $100 higher fee in order to take a risk on them for whatever reason. Maybe their dad co-signs, maybe I get a triple deposit. And so there are many of us that are willing to work with high-risk people. And so I don't think there's ever really a problem finding housing. What there's a problem is finding easy housing, right? I mean, people say this is called the hard-to-house population. Can they go to the brand new apartment community and get a place? No. Can they rent next to a school? No. Can they rent somewhere? Of course they can. Okay? It's not option A, B, or C, but they'll be able to find something. And so what we help advocates like you that are helping people or they're in church callings or things like that is we say, guys, don't focus on the ones that say no. Find the ones that will say yes, because they're out there. They really are. Okay? Yes?
Just kind of we had been working with people that had both sex crimes and drugs and alcohol. What we found is we're no longer willing to work with anyone because almost every case, sometimes it takes longer than others, but we end up getting screwed. Out of all the classes you listed, we've had the most success with sex offenders, especially sex offenders while they're on parole, because there's that element of supervision. But any kind of fraud, drugs, alcohol, theft, we've just decided that it is not worth it at all.
So based on your experience, you've kind of come to the same conclusion
Yes.
that it's high risk. And again, it's America, we can make whatever decisions we want, but let's put it this way. If my neighbor takes higher risk, should they pay the same fee that I do? I'm not sure that they should. If they do something that we know statistically is more likely to cost the police money, and police are paid for by the community taxpayers, I think it might be okay to have them pay a little bit higher fee. I don't have all the answers though. I'm just doing the best I can. Yes?
Well, I have a question on parking issues in Salt Lake
Sure.
City.
Yeah.
And you know, we all know that it's been publicized lately.
Yeah.
But my question is, I get the impression from my property manager that a compliance officer drives around with nothing else to do but check for unregistered, out of
unregistered, unlicensed vehicles.
Exactly.
Okay. Have you ever seen city employees driving around looking for problems? I certainly think it occurs. I think it's the minority of their time because I think that they're dealing with complaints and having meetings and stuff like that more than they are actually driving around looking. But I think that there's some cities that, yeah, once a week they go drive around. But most of the problems with code enforcement are complaint-based. Does everybody understand that? Okay? If nobody complains, they never hassle. Okay? So it's when somebody complains generally that they hassle. All right, well, Kirk Collimore is AWOL. I don't know what happened. I don't know if we miscommunicated with him. We've been trying to get a hold of him, but unfortunately, I'm going to have to be the backup and step in and talk about evictions and things. Hopefully he'll show up here. But if not, how many 3-day notices are there in Utah? Remember, you're the smart people. You know it. You just shut. Tell me what they are. There's the pay or vacate form, correct? There's the failure to comply, which we call the 3-day notice to perform covenants of the lease or vacate. And then there's the nuisance. Okay, so those are the three. Okay, there's 3 of them. And how many days do they give a tenant to fix a problem?
3.
Okay, and how do we count those 3 days? We never count the day we serve it. So if I served it on the Friday before President's Day, I'd count weekends. I'd count Saturday, Sunday, President's Day, and if they weren't out by midnight on Monday night, Tuesday morning, I can start the eviction. Okay? So how do you serve 3-day notices?
In person if you can.
The best way, Kim says, is to serve it in person and have a conversation. Say, listen, Paul, look, I like you, but you got to pay rent or you got to get rid of the dog or whatever it is within 3 days or you got to move. Okay? So what options do these notices give?
Shape up or ship out.
Shape up or ship out. Okay, so 2 of the notices, the pay or vacate, the comply or vacate, give them 2 options. What are they? One's vacate. Okay, if you can't fix this problem within 3 days, move out. Okay, if you can fix it, you can stay. Now, somebody called me one time and they said, "Oh, I hate this tenant. I'm so mad at him. Every time I serve them a 3-day notice, they quickly pay the rent. And do I have to keep them?" What's the answer? Until
They don't pay rent?
well, until the lease expires. Because if they're on a month-to-month agreement, we could do what? We can terminate for no reason. We can say, look, I don't want to do business with you anymore. In fact, I know if Kirk Colmer was here, he would say, if you're having a problem with a tenant, even if their lease doesn't expire for 8 months, give them an end-of-term notice today. Okay? Say, listen, Jeremy, it's not working. Okay? So you got to move out in July, no matter what. If you want to move out sooner, come talk to me and we'll work out a deal. Okay? So oftentimes you'll find that that is very successful. It helps you to do what? Get rid of your problem. Sometimes they say, oh, I didn't know that I was bothering you. I'm so sorry. I will change. It's amazing how often they finally wake up and say, my landlord's pissed at me. I got to behave myself. Okay? So we've got the 3 notices, pay or vacate. Now, a pay or vacate notice, let me read you some of the language. All residents and occupants are required to vacate the above premises within 3 days. So they either pay or they vacate. In the event the residents and occupants fail to vacate, they will or pay the amount stated above. Each will be in violation of Utah code and an unlawful detainer. What do those words mean, unlawful detainer? They are now there illegally because we have served them the proper notice that says you had a problem, you need to fix it, you have a contract issue, either you didn't pay or you have a dog or you're doing something that violates the contract. They are now technically under Utah law illegal. And what's the penalty now? It's not a criminal penalty, it's a civil penalty. But what is it? Triple rent. So you got a $1,000 place and your renter does something wrong. As soon as this 4th day kicks in, they are an unlawful detainer and that triple daily rent begins. Okay, so it takes a whole 30 days to get them out. They owe you an additional Plus what? Yes, and legal costs, it used to be, you had to have that in your contract, which of course you did if you used the apartment association contract. But Kirk Coleman and I a few years ago just put right in the statute that even if you don't say that you can get attorney's fees and court costs, that when landlords and tenants sue each other, the prevailing party always gets attorney's fees and court costs. So that's really, really helpful. Okay? So if you're helping somebody that had a verbal agreement, or you bought a property that doesn't have a written agreement, you still can charge attorney's fees and court costs. Yes, sir.
Is it okay to charge a service fee?
So there is, and most contracts have what's called a service of notice fee. What service of notice fees do you in this room charge?
$50.
$50? $35? Okay, yeah, that's reasonable, okay? And so there's no, plus what?
Charge them a late fee?
Plus a late fee. Let's talk about late fees for a second. What's too high of a late fee? 10%. Okay, so I had a woman call me. I told you the story that she says, I hate this guy every time I pay him and serve him a 3-day notice. He pays, and I don't want him to stay. But he had a 3-year lease, and he was an executive property, kind of a big house in Park City. And she said, I'm so frustrated. I said, I bet I know your problem. She says, what? I said, what's your rent? $3,500. What's your late fee? $25. There's your problem. Okay, if you'd set your late fee sufficient, $350, or whatever you want. Think about it. How many of you would drive once a month to Park City for the extra $350? Stop at the outlet malls, go to dinner on Wednesday. We would enjoy him paying late and serving that notice if it was the right amount. And so late fees compensate us for inconvenience in addition to disincentivize late payments. Yes, sir.
I seem to recall that daily late fees are not too desirable.
Yes.
What's the thinking on that?
The thinking is a daily late fee could very quickly get you above the threshold of what?
10%.
Right. And if you're above the threshold of 10% and you go to court, what's the judge going to do?
You're gonna get it.
Throw the whole late fee out. And so rather than jeopardize our 10% late fee, we said we'll take that and not do the daily late fee. Now that's the pragmatic reason, but you know what what the research reason is? Do you think daily late fees work? No. All the research tells us daily late fees don't incentivize tenants a beat. Okay? Oh, I'm going to get $5 extra per day. Oh, big deal. Okay? What does incentivize them to get their act together? 3-day notice. Okay? 10%, something like that. That's much more persuasive than a little slap on the wrist every day. Okay? All right, so there are 4 ways that you can serve notice. Kim said we should serve it personally, correct? What's the second best way if we can't find them? Okay, so if we go and we talk to him, we say, listen, please fix this or move out, because if you don't fix it or move out, my attorney is a stalker and he's going to garnish your wages and you're going to have judgments on your record. It's going to be miserable for the rest of your life. So let's not get there. Okay, either move or pay. If you can't talk to him, the next best thing is to post it on the door. Okay, now just remind you, I know sometimes you're worried about embarrassing people. So we've known landlords that do this, or do this, or do this, and put it between the door. And guess what? That's not proper service, okay? If you're worried about embarrassing them, call them up, say, at 5 o'clock, I'm going to come over and serve a 3-day notice. So either pay by then or meet me at the door, okay? But if they're not there, we post it face out. We typically tape all 4 corners, okay? We have an attorney that's on our board now, Jeremy Shorts, really nice guy. And he did a presentation down in Utah County last night. He told me recently they had a client that served a notice. And what did they do within 5 seconds of posting that notice on the door? They pulled out their phone and they took a picture, okay? And we'll probably have an article in the newspaper on this soon. Anyway, so they've got this picture. Well, these people show up at court with another picture. And they say it was Halloween. It was kind of, there were some Halloween decorations. And what they've done is they've moved and they put Halloween decorations on the outside. So all you could see was the corner of this notice. And they wanted to make it look like the landlord was trying to trick them, or the landlord didn't give them proper notice. And it was wonderful that the client had their own picture, because they pulled it out and they said, no, let me show you what it looked like when we served it. And the judge just kind of rolled his eyes and kicked the tenants right out. Okay? So always a good idea if you can to take a picture. All right, now there's two other ways you could serve it, but you're not going to. What are they? You could leave it with another party, and then you'd have to send a second copy. So it says you can leave it with a person of suitable age or discretion at tenant's place of business or residence, and mail a second copy. Don't do that. Just tell Grandma, shut the door so I can post it. The last one is you could mail it how? And it's only deemed served if what? They pick it up. Are they going to pick it up, Linda? No. Nobody picks up certified mail from their landlords. Okay? So that's what, now, there's 3 places we sign a 3-day notice. What are the 3 places? The first is that we're the authorized agent and how to contact us. The second is how we served it. We say, I served it by posting it, or I served it by hand delivering it. The third is what we call the self-attestation. This is where we used to have the notary. We really are signing it the 3rd time to attest that we meant it the first 2 times we signed it. Okay? Now that's just thoroughness of the law, but at least we don't have to get it notarized anymore. That was a real pain. So, okay. So the comply or vacate works very similar. What are the kinds of things? Give me 10 things tenants do that deserve a comply or vacate notice. They have an unauthorized animal without your permission. Okay? And so we could resolve that in 2 ways. What are the 2 ways to resolve it?
Charge them the daily fee.
Well, so what we do, Kim says kidnap the pet, but I don't recommend that. We could remove the animal within 3 days, or we could renegotiate the contract. Okay? So if I'm the tenant, the notice basically gives me an option. Either get the pet out of here, or approach the landlord and say, well, would you allow an animal? Because sometimes you would, right? And you charge a daily rent, or a pet rent. How many do you charge pet rent? What is it? How much?
25.
25? 30?
50.
50? Okay, you guys are entrepreneurs, and you know that Fluffy is a member of their family, and they're going to pay that fee. So sometimes I've seen landlords charge as much as $100 per month a pet. Okay? What else do you charge for pets sometimes? A non-refundable fee just for the privilege of having a pet you got to put down. Okay? What else? Some of you say deposit? Yeah. You charge how much more deposit, Craig?
$300, 50% more.
Okay, 50% more. Whatever the deposit is, Craig charges 50% more. So we might allow an animal if they renegotiated the lease. Yes?
What about the companion animal?
Okay, let's talk about companion animals for a second, okay? What is a companion animal? Guess what? I don't care. I don't know. I don't need to know. What I need to know is, how do I approve one? What's the process?
They should have a note from the doctor.
Okay, so if I bring you a note that says, take 2 cats and call me in the morning, is that enough? No. What they need to do is fill out our approved form that is approved by the Disability Law Center. It's in the process of being approved by HUD, by the way. And this form says, what accommodation are you requesting? It's called Reasonable Accommodation Request Form. It says, we're requesting an animal. Okay, well, how is the animal necessary for a disability? It says, Fluffy helps regulate my depression, my bipolar disorder, my post-traumatic stress disorder, whatever it is. Okay, let's assume that there are some people that legitimately have doctors that prescribe these because they need them. Do we want to protect those people? Sure we do. This federal law says we have to allow a seeing eye dog, or a seizure dog, or companion animals that really are necessary. But here's the thing: once they fill it out, you send it to who? Who's going to approve it? The doctor. And you say, doctor, do they really need it? Is it a necessity? And are they disabled under federal law? And if he says or she says yes, guess what we do? We give them the animal. It's not a pet at that point. It's a tool like a wheelchair or a prescription to help them adapt to society. Okay? Can we charge extra fees?
No.
No. We can't charge extra rent or deposit or any of that kind of stuff. Okay? Any questions on service animals?
How about if they tear your house up? Do you do anything about
Now,
it?
what if they do damage? Let me ask you this way. What if their wheelchair does damage? Obviously, we can charge them for it. What if their crutches do damage? Yeah. What if their service animal does damage? Yes, the same thing. But what we do is we charge them when? After the fact, not punitively before. Okay? Yes?
Can you turn down somebody because you don't accept animals or pets and they say they have a companion animal?
He's asking a question. Can I just say, sorry,
Just look
I
for
don't
another
like animals, go somewhere else? Well, wait a second, think here. You can if what?
If you don't have documentation.
Well, A, if they didn't get it approved, okay? And B, who's exempt from fair housing? People with 3 units or less. So I have a duplex, I can say no thank you. If I have 4, I can't. So that's the answer to your question, okay? And normally we don't teach that because we just say best business practice is best business practice, but when you ask a direct question like can a duplex owner say no, the answer is yes. Okay? Fair housing law is not binding on people with 3 units or less, only 4 units or more, yeah.
Just to clarify, you're saying that for the accommodation form, you have them fill it out and give you their doctor's contact information.
Right, we send it to the doctor, we call that third-party verification. How many of you accept the credit and criminal background check from the tenant's hands? From Rocco the Forger's, no. Okay, we third-party verify, we do it the same way with the doctor's note. Okay?
Do you have to use their doctor?
Well, there is somebody that will attest that they're disabled and that they need this accommodation. And no, it doesn't have to be a doctor. Most of the time it's a doctor. But it could be a social worker or a psychiatrist, or it could be somebody that knows their situation. Yes?
So in this market though,
Yeah.
you put a place on KSL,
Yeah.
typically have it rented within 2 or 3 days.
Okay?
But by the time they filled out the form, you send it off to their doctor, you're talking about probably a week or 2 before you can get it back from your doctor. Do you just take the next qualified applicant because you
This is a
don't-
really good question. Okay, so she says, I've got somebody who applies. What should I do? Well, I approve the application. That's, we normally do that 24 hours, right? We background checks, landlord checks, and we approve the application. They also want a service animal. Okay, well, we can't approve that yet until we have the documentation approved. But let me just say, guys, if you're not getting that same stuff back from the doctor quickly, you need to ask the tenant, get that back, because I need that back. But you bifurcate. Does that make sense?
Okay.
You approve them to live there. Would they like to sign a lease? And then if they sign a lease, they're approved to live there. They're committed to live there, and then we'll deal with the service animal thing later. Okay? If they're saying I'm not going to sign a lease until you approve my service animal, then what do you say?
Go to the next applicant.
Okay, I get you 24 more hours, and then I'm going to jump to the next hour. Yes, Greg.
I swear half these companion animals are phony.
Well, here's the problem with real life. Real life is that we give a sweet deal to protect people who really need service animals and companion animals, and the rest of society says, oh, you mean I don't have to pay a pet fee and pet rent if I can just get a doctor to sign this note? And so we do have a lot of fraud. I don't know what the specific, some people say it's 50% or 2/3.
I don't know the number.
I don't know either, but here's the thing. We still have an obligation to do what? Approve it for people who deserve it and who are entitled to it. But we can do that and protect their rights while at the same time, hopefully weed out everybody else.
But
Yeah.
the question is, why would you bypass a lot of good resident applicants while you wait a week or so?
I wouldn't. I'd say get 24 hours to get all your stuff in, or I'm going to move on to the next person.
Okay.
So you can certainly say, you got to get your landlord to call me back. I got to get, your employer, your pay stubs within 24 hours. We also could require that the doctor respond within 24 hours. Okay? Yeah.
If what we found is you're doing the rest of your background checks,
Yeah.
generally if they're going to lie to you about an animal, they're lying about
You'll find
about
something
others.
else. You'll find something else. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so where are we? Yes.
Now, how about 2 duplexes? If you've got 2.
If you have 2 duplexes, you have how many units?
4.
4. You're now covered by fair housing law. you can be racked up if you discriminate.
What if you set them up under a different LLC for you?
What if you creatively try to dodge federal law? It doesn't usually work very well. So don't do this stuff like this LLC and this LLC. If you have ownership interest in it, you own it under federal law. So. Good question, though.
I have a couple questions. One is that service fee you charge. Can you charge them that for delivering a 3-day notice?
Yes, a service of notice fee is for delivering a 3-day notice. Okay. How many of you've charged one recently? Okay. You're $50 richer because your tenant wasn't on tax. Plus the late fees. So you got a good month. Did you go out to Sizzler or would you?
Yeah.
Great.
It happened to me 3 times with this tenant.
Yeah. How many of you have tenants or have had tenants that pay late regularly? Oh my gosh, I love those guys. Now, as long as they pay, right? I mean, if they pay on the 6th or the 7th and they're paying late fees. I had one tenant one year that paid me 12 $80 late fees. That was a lot of money. Okay? I have a tenant right now that has paid me a late fee. I have 2 tenants that have paid me, one of them's a $100 late fee, the other one's an $80 late fee, every month for the last 6 months.
How late do they usually go?
Love that. How late do they go? Kim says. How late do you think is too late?
3 days.
15th of the month.
Okay, now most of us would serve a notice about the 6th. But Rich says, look, if I have long history with these people, I know they're kind of flaky, but they eventually make it up. Then maybe I extend it to the 15th.
No,
Some of us might do it even longer.
I actually serve it on the 4th day.
Oh, you serve it on the 4th day of the month?
The 15th that's when they're going to be evicted.
That's the drop dead. I'll give you till the 15th, but you've already got the 3-day notice. Okay. Yeah, and some of us, don't let anybody tell you that they know how to run their business or your business better than you do. You know these people, you know these customers. Don't take excessive risks. Like, I certainly wouldn't let it get months and months behind. Okay? But, there's a case, I'll be honest with you, where I had a doctor co-signer and his son had lived in my place for 10 years. And, they just kind of got 3 or 4 months behind. And I would always know that I could serve the notice, and I'd call up the doctor and say, doctor, I just served a 3-day notice for $4,000. He'd say, no problem, and he'd take care of it. Okay? So there are circumstances where you'd go a little bit longer, but I'd say 15 days is about right for most people. Yeah. If there's not serious effort to be paying it by the 15th, statistically, do you know people who don't pay by the 15th are more than 50% likely to never pay? So that's one statistic you should know. Okay, one question.
Yeah, the 3-day notice after the 3rd day.
Yeah. When can I serve a 3-day notice? Anytime rent's late. Okay, so if the lease says it's due 5 o'clock on the 1st, I can serve it at 5:01 on the 1st. Many of us wait till the 6th because why? We wrote a grace period for the 5th, and so we just, have it. Okay, but
Well, yeah, so the 3rd day comes and they call you up and say, oh, can you give me another day?
yeah, let's talk about this for a
Yeah.
second. Okay.
Would it jeopardize your case if they just keep?
I serve you a $1,000, or say your rent's $1,000, $100 late fee, $50 service of notice fee. I serve you notice for $1,150. Okay, scenario A. You bring me $1,000. Do I have to accept it? No, I don't have to accept it because why? It's not the full amount. Would I accept it? Yeah, because $1,000 will buy you 3 more days. And then how do we apply the $1,000? Yeah, our contracts say all payments go first to non-rent items like late fees, service of notice fees, utilities, that kind of stuff. So they paid $150 late fees and service fees, and they paid $850 rent. So we turn around and serve them a $150 notice with another $50 service of notice fee. See how this works? So sure, I would work with them. Now, if they only paid $100, $200, do I have to take that? No. Okay, now let's talk about time. I serve it to them on Friday, so we count Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Monday night they call me and they say, I won't have it till tomorrow. What could I do first thing Tuesday? Pull the trigger, right? Start the eviction. Or I can wait till noon. Okay, it's up to you. But on the 4th day, if you're ticked, you don't have to accept anything because unlawful detainer starts at 12:01 on the 4th day. 12:01 a.m. on the 4th day, you no longer have to work with them. In fact, when you hire an attorney, most attorneys say, don't work with the tenant anymore. They can call us and negotiate with us because they're gonna have late fees and attorney's fees and court costs and all that stuff. But once you've gone into that 4th day, most attorneys would say, don't really work with people. But how many of you have been successful waiting 5-6 days and you got the money? Again, you know these people better than anybody. You know if they're flaky. You know if there's a good likelihood of success. So I'm not going to be mad at you if you make a judgment call. Yeah.
So delaying it to the 6th day, and then say the 6th day, 7th day, you pull the trigger, doesn't that jeopardize when it goes to court that you?
So how many of you like to go to lunch right at noon? What happens when you go to the restaurant right at noon? It's busy, okay? So most of us like to go at 11:45, you know, that kind of thing. And it's the same with evictions. We know that if we wait till the 10th, 11th, 12th to start the eviction, it might take a few more days because everybody's there. So fortunately, the courts aren't too bad. You're not going to get penalized too much for being right in the middle of the bell curve and doing your eviction the same time everybody else does. But let's say it's somebody who's chronically late and you know eventually you're going to have to evict them. You can start early just to hold their feet to the fire and say, look, I just don't want to mess with it. Okay, so we've got, yes?
On the formula for the lease, it says that there's a spot there where it said fee for eviction.
Yeah, what is an eviction turnover fee? An eviction turnover fee is the cost of putting 4 pieces of paper on the fax machine and hitting send. Okay? Now, I'm being a little bit facetious, but is it inconvenient for you to have to put all the paperwork together and get an eviction started? Okay, there's a little bit of a cost there, okay? So what are those 4 pieces of paper? Oh, by the way, what do you charge as an eviction turnover fee? What seems reasonable just for handling some paperwork? $35, $50, somewhere in that range. That's what we see most commonly, Linda, as the service of notice fee. Oh, not service of notice fee, eviction turnover fee. Okay, what are the 4 documents I put on the printer? The contract, obviously, to establish the relationship.
3-day notice.
The 3-day notice to establish the violation. How about that application with where they work and their social security number and all that kind of stuff? That's helpful. And then a ledger, kind of a history of their payments and so on and so forth. Attorney needs that to know how much you've billed and how much they've paid, that kind of stuff. Okay, so if I sent that to my attorney on Tuesday morning, 9 a.m., all evictions in Utah are now filed by electronic filing. Okay, they don't ever run it down to the court anymore. They just sit in their office and file it electronically. They print it out, put it on their stack, and the constable comes and gets it. And we do have most of our evictions served by constables, even though there's not very many constables anymore. And so some are served by private investigators. Almost none are served by sheriffs. Why are sheriffs kind of out of fashion? They take too long, and they cost too much. I mean, here's the thing. Usually when the government's competing against private entities, they don't compete very well, okay? And so, gosh, we'd all love to give business to the sheriff's office. And in certain areas, you might find St. George's Sheriff's fast, but...
My experience is folks answer the door when the sheriff knocks.
Oh, okay, so he likes the official.
They look through the peephole and...
Now, if you're using the right constables, they guarantee 24-hour service. Okay. So they got to maybe try 4 times, but they try, they go get a big gulp, they try, they go whatever, you know, they come back. And so they're pretty good, these constables, at getting it served even if the tenant's ducking them. Yeah, there's 3 options. Constables, private investigators, or sheriffs. Private investigators don't serve as many, but the law opened up a couple years ago to allow them. Why do you think we sponsored that law? To get constables to be more reasonable. Okay, we really wanted the constables to do it, but they were screwing us a little bit. So we said, fine, we'll allow PIs to do it. And they said, never mind, we'll be on our best behavior. And so they've been on their best behavior ever
Do
since.
they cost about the same?
Yeah, it depends. Who's done one recently? $40, $35, something like that for service? Okay. Usually, most of us use attorneys, and so we see it through the attorney's bill. Yeah.
Is anyone that who is under above 18 years old also can serve them for you as long as you are not related with?
No. So this is a very interesting distinction. Who can serve a 3-day notice?
Only
No, a 3-day notice.
Oh, 3 days.
Oh,
Anybody. Who can serve a document from the courts?
Anybody.
No.
Just constable.
Only an officer of the court. And who are we talking about when we talk about officers of the courts? Sheriffs, constables, and private detectives can serve certain notices. So that's the distinction, is you can serve the 3-day notices, but you can't serve the lawsuit, the summons, and the complaint unless you're an officer of the court. All right, so what is the first thing that a tenant gets when they find out they're being sued by you? There's 2 pieces of paper that they're going to be served. Summons and complaint. And the summons says, hey, Paul, we're suing you, and you have a right to respond. And how many days do I get to respond? 3 court days. Okay, it says within 3 court days, respond to the court. You can request a hearing. You can explain what's going on. If you don't, there will be summary judgment or default judgment issued. And that little flow chart you were looking at goes straight down. If you notice, if they don't within 3 days respond, the court can issue a summary judgment, and you can get an immediate order of restitution. What does that mean? Today we can change the locks. Okay, today we can move their stuff out. And now most people, I'd say about 50%, they're sophisticated enough, even if they can't pay or they can't resolve it, to come up with some BS excuse. Any of your tenants ever come up with some BS excuse? Okay, and so they send it into the court and they say, our life's hard, that's why we haven't paid. Okay, well now, because they've answered, the court requires a hearing. Okay, so we schedule up a hearing. How long are hearings set for in Utah? 10 days. Used to be unlimited, but they can set it 3 months out. We required that one of the reasons they're so much faster is they have to hear it within 10 days. So I go into court and say, Your Honor, they haven't paid. They make their bullcrap argument, and the judge says what? Sorry, you're out. Law's clear. Okay? Usually gives them 3 extra days, and then on the 4th day, a constable can go change the locks. Well, they don't change the locks, but they stand there while you do it, and you know, take possession, help them take possession of the premises. Yeah.
Question for you on military. I had a case, Native American, older, but the judge was saying, hey, we need to verify if they're in the military. I mean, I'm thinking, isn't there some